What is up, everybody? We're coming to you from Portland, the Regional Championship 2018. Got an exciting matchup for you, Jackson Finch versus Yuan Hao Lee.
Yeah, should be a great match. Jackson coming off of top 8 in Costa Mesa just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Used a Persian team there that's pretty similar to what he's using today.
Yeah, a big Persian fan. I actually spoke to him the weekend before the event, and it sounded like he pretty much planned on sticking to his guns. Big Persian fan, using your favorites sometimes, especially when they're as viable as they are. It's a pretty nice feeling. Yuan Hao, on the other hand, he is from Canada, and he's not the most able to travel, I'll go with. He did qualify for Worlds in 2016, and he has had pretty good success on online tournaments in the past. So whenever he can come out to an event, it's a pretty cool experience just to be able to get a player that doesn't maybe have the time or financial means to be able to get out to all these different events. It's cool to see that sort of maybe diamond in the rough talent, if you will.
Yeah, so someone who definitely is consistently in our streams up here in the Northwest because he is always X&O pretty late into the tournament. So,
I mean, if you've ever spoken to any of the Canadian VGC players, they often speak very highly of Hao. It's just he can't get out as much.
Yeah, and so when he does, he's looking to make the best use of it. You're going to be trying to do that against Jackson today. Jackson going to be trying to make it back to that top 8 at 2 consecutive regionals for him, probably.
Hey, back-to-back top 8s is pretty strong. Team preview on the screen. Seeing Persian, Tyranitar, Tapu Fini, Landorus Therian, Zapdos, and Metagross from Jackson. While from Hao, we see Gardevoir, Amoonguss, Incineroar, Aegislash, Tapu Fini, and Landorus Therian. Hao's team pretty reminiscent of the very early Japanese teams that used the Gardevoir-Incineroar combination.
Yes, definitely something that reminds me of kind of 2015 teams with that Gardevoir going to be looking to get big Hyper Voices off, supported by Intimidate from both Incineroar and Landorus. You have that Fake Out, and then Aegislash is another great offensive option, especially if you can get Trick Room up maybe with Gardevoir.
Interesting to see the dynamic that Incineroar can play here. It's one of those Pokemon that, thanks to its typing and the presence of Intimidate, kind of combats Metagross in a nice way, whereas before the Intimidate was released, Metagross looking very dominant. It's still pretty dominant of Pokemon, but much less so, especially in conjunction with something like Aegislash, making it pretty safe to fire off Hyper Voices.
Yeah, you're definitely going to need the support from your Intimidates, from Aegislash as a switch-in threat to keep that Gardevoir safe, because otherwise Iron Head is such a big problem for it, and Metagross isn't so worried about Hyper Voice or Psychic, so definitely something that's going to be left for the team to deal with, while Gardevoir can maybe hopefully handle the rest. I mean, stuff like Persian and T-Tar really don't want to be taking Hyper Voices.
I mean, to me, at least right away, it looks like the key for success here is being able to contain that Metagross. You have tools, but they're not the fastest. You have to be sort of careful in your positioning. And Persian actually pretty annoying for that. Something that has a faster Fake Out, pretty good defense, and abuses physical attack stats on the opponent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're parting shot out right before that Hyper Voice hits every time, then it doesn't matter what type you are.
Landorus and Aegislash coming out from Hao, while from Jackson we see Persian and Metagross.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup here. No Gardevoir immediately on the field, but Persian is out here going to be looking to either Fake Out Landorus or maybe, if it has Foul Play, pick up a big chunk of damage on Aegislash straight away. Metagross in a pretty bad position here. Has to worry about Landorus being scarfed and getting out either before it takes the Ice Punch or just getting off an Earthquake first. And then, of course, Aegislash, don't want to be taking a Shadow Ball with Metagross from Aegislash.
Aegislash speed also being so helpful because the foul plays won't be able to do that much damage while it's in shield form.
Yeah, so this is definitely a dangerous position for Yuan Hao to be in.
Landorus getting out of there immediately. You don't want to risk taking that Ice Punch. Incineroar replacing it, the other Intimidate, the dual Intimidate sort of cycles that we've been seeing lately.
Both in the clear body, though.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter on the Metagross so much, but it's really there more for the Fake Out pressure after Persian can't do it anymore and resisting a possible Ice attack, which isn't going to happen as we see Tapu Fini replacing that Metagross. Setting up the Misty Terrain. There won't be any status, looking excellent against that Incineroar. Aegislash, in a decent position. King Shield just doesn't want to risk any stomping tantrum business or foul plays. You want that health. Parting Shot, not really caring about King Shield, as King Shield only blocks direct attacks, so you are getting that special attack drop on the Aegislash, and if it matters for any reason, the physical attack drop as well.
Yeah, and so Persian going to be getting off the field, looking to bring in something that can deal with these, and that's the Landorus coming in.
His own Intimidate just making a pretty annoying situation. Incineroar is at -1. Aegislash is at -2. Hopefully it's the special set. But, we have seen, I believe we did see physical Aegislash in Charlotte. There was definitely something recently where I was surprised to see Aegislash do such odd things.
But of course, even if Aegislash is special,
Yeah.
we've already seen that parting shot come out, so not going to be putting out too much damage.
Yeah.
Still keeping a strong board position here for Jackson as he pivots around, tries to find the opportunity to do big damage.
More pivots right here as Landorus is being replaced for its Bud Persian, not caring about really anything that Incineroar or Aegislash could do. Aegislash recognizing that its stats aren't in the right place, getting out of there for the Gardevoir, which is looking in a pretty decent position considering Metagross is in the back. Freedom to sing that song. Fur Coat, well, pretty amusing to trace. Won't matter too much when you go into your Mega Form. Incineroar opting out, going to that double switch. Landorus replacing it, getting another Intimidate. But these two Pokemon don't really care about that too much. You're trying to get a better position for yourself. Tapu Fini pretty free to attack here. Going for the Muddy Water. Should do pretty big damage to the Landorus. Hopefully items aren't revealed. Ooh, wow, that did a lot. Probably Choice Specs Tapu Fini if I had to guess. We did see Jackson use that in Costa Mesa recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, right? That's so much damage coming out of the Landorus, just barely hanging on. A couple HP there, and the accuracy drop on top of it, really neutering whatever Landorus was planning to do. Gardevoir is in a pretty strong position, though, especially if it is that Choice Specs Tapu Fini. Not going to be able to take those Hyper Voices as well as something like a more bulky setup Tapu Fini. But you have Persian out there to cover things for Tapu Fini, maybe prevent that Hyper Voice.
Gardevoir just protecting itself. You don't want a situation where you get the free fake off, KO the Landorus and the Gardevoir taking such big damage at the same time. Going for the Earthquake, protecting your Gardevoir further, trying to create a situation, but that Muddy Water drop preventing Tapu Fini from getting hit by that Earthquake. Persian doesn't really care about that too much thanks to its Fur Coat, though I have to say that's more damage than I would normally expect it to take. Muddy Water, the tank is blown up once again. The water's getting everywhere. Muddy Water just going to remove that Landorus from the field, giving Jackson a quick, or maybe not so quick, but a strong 4-3 position.
Yeah, I mean, that unintimidated Earthquake would have been really valuable for that 1 HP Landorus to get off, but unfortunately it does miss that Tapu Fini. Instead, you get the much less important damage only against Persian, and then Landorus does go ahead and go down to that Muddy Water. We'll have to see what he can bring in, hopefully something that can cover for Gardevoir, but it did protect itself through the Persian fake-out turn, so should be able to get a Hyper Voice off this turn. But it may come after a parting shot has already weakened that damage.
Yeah, we're really seeing how Persian is pretty effective in being able to choose its targets and apply not only physical drops, but special drops as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then come back in, threaten to fake out later in the game. Jackson taking, or rather, Yuan Hao taking quite a bit of time here to decide what to bring in. Really critical turning point in the game.
I mean, Hao's already revealed his selected for the game. We know that it's Aegislash and Gardevoir in the front and Incineroar in the back. Tapu Fini looking very good here. Persian hard to break outside of the Gardevoir. Parting shot basically unstoppable at this point.
Yeah, I would expect it to go into that Gardevoir just to not allow too much Hyper Voice damage to start coming out. Maybe that means Aegislash gets an full strength attack off. You can try to chip into Tapu Fini that way. That's a lot of damage between Hyper Voice and something like a Shadow Ball or Flash Cannon. But you have to worry about whatever comes into that Persian slot. Have to see what Jackson thinks is the best option when you do pretty much expect that Hyper Voice coming in. Probably Metagross, that means so you might target a Shadow Ball at that slot just to see if you can catch Metagross in the switch, and that could be really valuable.
There's definitely room for a big read to pay off here. We do see Mega Gardevoir just powering up, ready to sing. Wide guard from the Aegislash, doesn't want that Muddy Water. Knowing its choice specs basically means Tapu Fini will do nothing. Taunt from the Persian, but on the Gardevoir slot as opposed to the Aegislash, probably trying to prevent a Trick Room or something that can turn the situation. Hyper Voice freely coming out from Gardevoir, KOing that Persian pretty easily and doing very solid damage to Persian.
Yeah, that was a risky taunt.
Tapu Fini.
Risky taunt there. Really doesn't want that Trick Room to come up while Aegislash and Gardevoir are in the field, but that means that instead of just parting shotting out and then letting something else take the Hyper Voice, Persian takes it and goes down. So all that flexibility that those pivots with parting shot and fake out give you, that threaten with foul play later in the game, all that's gone now. And back to 3-3. I think that's a really strong turn for Hao.
Metagross returning to the field. I mean, from that, you have to assume, I think, that he just didn't expect a wide guard. He just got so much mileage out of that one turn, and being stuck in that slot with Fini, pretty annoying. Metagross not really liking the Aegislash opposing, while Gardevoir doesn't like Metagross. It's a lot more complicated situation than it really was just a few turns ago.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I'd expect that Tapu Fini goes ahead and just clicks Muddy Water, even knowing that Hyper Voice is out there, because you have to be more worried about Aegislash's Shadow Ball towards Metagross than you are about Muddy Water just preventing, or rather Wide Guard just preventing Muddy Water, since
Absolutely.
you are already threatening that Gardevoir with Iron Head. But if you just Iron Head into Protect, allow a pretty weak Muddy Water onto Aegislash and lose Metagross for it, that's a disastrous turn. So Jackson's really got to find the avenue in here that risks the least while not counting on too much.
Metagross going into its Protect, indicating that no player has made a switch here. Tapu Fini hopefully going to be able to get off of Muddy Water this turn. Iron Head, no Wide Guard or King Shield. Gardevoir just going down for free, essentially, hoping that the Aegislash can sort of trade for the Metagross as a Mega Trade. Muddy Water is going to hit. Hopefully no accuracy drop. Missing the Shadow Ball could end the game here for you, but a large amount of... Oh, critical hit. Yeah, they did a ton of damage. No accuracy drop. We're seeing the sword come out from the shield form. Undoubtedly targeting that Metagross in my mind. Oh, but he goes for the Tapu Fini. Don't listen to me.
Wow.
But really didn't do too much damage, and he hadn't taken parting shot earlier.
Really didn't do too much damage and gave up the chance to KO Metagross. I was on the same page as you. I thought the no Protect from Gardevoir indicated he was saying, yeah, you can take KO Gardevoir, but that means you've attacked with Metagross, means I can get that Shadow Ball off. Instead went fully for the risky play, expected to allow Gardevoir to not take an Iron Head and then also get Shadow Ball off towards Tapu Fini. You know, if you had gotten that Shadow Ball off on Metagross, then your Tapu Fini stuck on the field, stuck Muddy Watering, and you have Wide Guard. It's such a strong position. Instead, now you have to find a way to deal with this Metagross that can KO Aegislash. Muddy Water should KO Aegislash. Incineroar was going to not want to take a Stomping Tantrum too much.
Right.
And definitely doesn't want to take a Choice Specs Muddy Water. This is just a ton of damage now being threatened from Jackson's side of the field.
It's a rough situation, and instead of going for a potential trade or even trying to preserve options by going for like a potential Incineroar switch from the Gardevoir slot, we're seeing a situation in which Landorus can come out pretty freely, no longer having to be stuck in Muddy Water in the Tapu Fini slot, and weakening the Incineroar, making it so that, the situation is already one in which Metagross can easily KO Aegislash with a Stomping Tantrum or even an Iron Head since it's still in the Sword form. The Iron Head going into the Aegislash slot, either preserving the Stomping Tantrum slot, just keeping that information hidden, or, just willing to go with what we've already seen, picking up the KO easily because of the Sword form. Flare Blitz in retaliation, but not enough due to the Intimidate from the Landorus slot. Incineroar versus the World, it's 3-on-1, and it's looking pretty rough for Hao here.
Yeah, it's 3-on-1, and one of those is a Choice Specs Tapu Fini in the back, just itching to hit a Muddy Water on this Incineroar. You also have full health Landorus,
exactly.
Earthquake. There's just so much here. The damage really got out of control quickly for Hao.
Losing the Persian earlier looked pretty rough, but it ended up not mattering too much because he Hao, that is, didn't capitalize enough on the turns where Aegislash had this freedom to really be this offensive and supportive threat at the same time.
Yeah, got that one really valuable Wide Guard off, but then took that critical hit Muddy Water that really removed its ability to take any attack, and then missed its one opportunity to get that Shadow Ball off on Metagross, and so just didn't provide the utility it needed to.
I also have to wonder just how invested, how well trained that Aegislash was. While Tapu Fini is considerably more bulky and not weak to ghost attacks, just seeing the damage output makes me wonder if Metagross would have even gone down to that in the first place. Landorus getting out of there, Tapu Fini returning to the field very safe. You want to preserve your Intimidate, weaken Incineroar even further, especially in a situation where he has to pick his target in such a way where he doesn't get huge benefits in either scenario. Iron Head, once again, you don't want to reveal more information, and you could get a potential flitch, but the Flare Blitz comes out anyway and pretty easily knocks out that Metagross. Landorus will return to the field, and you are basically playing two of Incineroar's best answers here. Yeah,
you have the two things Incineroar doesn't want to see, while Incineroar is sitting at -1 attack, and...
Well, -2 now.
Once this Intimidate comes out, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a matter of time here. We got to start looking at the next game.
Yeah, I hope Hao's already been there mentally.
Yeah, you've got to start figuring out maybe a way to get Trick Room up that could be really valuable with that Aegislash and Gardevoir together under Trick Room. Don't see too many great answers from Jackson for that. Could be your avenue, but then you have to worry about things like that taunt that we already saw come out and try to prevent that Trick Room on the one turn where it really could have viably happened in this game.
Well, you could go for one of the old classics, Gardevoir Moongus, redirect that taunt. I'm setting it up anyway.
There you go. Yeah, that's definitely a classic play. You could also try to get one of your fake out support Pokemon in, set up your Trick Room that way. Lots of games where we've seen Trick Room need to have some support next to it to actually get up. Just a lone taunt's not going to be enough to stop it if
Absolutely
it's what
not.
Hao really wants to get. And I'm not seeing any reason why it shouldn't be.
Lander's just going for the U-turn. To me, that he just doesn't want to risk missing Rock Slide and going for the Earthquake when Scald already picks it up so safely, especially with that extra little bit of chip damage. Hao took his time there. To me, that just indicates that he wants to use the time that he has available to think about the next game.
Yeah, sure. We do see Scald revealed there,
Yeah.
showing 2 water moves. We don't know what the rest of that moveset is, but maybe that's something that Hao can read into, try to figure out if there's any gaps in what this Tapu Fini can do.
I mean, most players will just assume Moonblast is there. It's a very safe assumption. If Tapu Fini has Moonblast, I would say 95% of the time
Absolutely,
minimum.
yeah.
But, by not revealing that, there's always that potential mind game. What if this is that one time where it doesn't happen? Similar to what you saw Alberto do earlier on stream, where he kept pressing Muddy Water even though the single target move would have been so safe. Just the preservation of information matters so much in a best-of-3 set.
Speaking of movesets and information, we saw Iron Head repeatedly used when
Yeah,
Stomping Tantrum
exactly.
would have been more damage. That may have been to, hide that Stomping Tantrum.
Absolutely.
But I think it probably just means it's not there. You saw
Very
2 situations
possible.
where Iron Head was relatively risky. If you do get King Shielded, you haven't failed that Stomping Tantrum, so in the next turn it's not double base power. And then into Incineroar when you could have just picked up way more damage. So maybe that lack of Stomping Tantrum is something Hao can look at and see.
Right.
Maybe these Pokemon are actually much safer in on the field against Metagross than I thought they were coming into this match. I can look at things like Incineroar and Aegislash and just be comfortable leaving both of those on the field against Metagross the whole time.
I mean, that's one of Metagross. I mean, not to say it doesn't have problems, but it doesn't have that many relative to a lot of a lot of the issues that different Pokemon have, Metagross does not. But one of the main issues is that it has only 4 move slots, and some Pokemon have specific needs for coverage moves, which so you kind of put that burden on your team building a little bit to try and mitigate the lack of certain coverage moves. In this case, the very potential Stomping Tantrum missing, but it's something that Metagross can deal with. It's just an annoying situation, and that is why you keep seeing Iron Head as well. Just because, do I have it or not? That mind game is still created.
Yeah, so we see Aegislash and Gardevoir up against Persian and Landorus here immediately. Gardevoir's up here, but up against Fake Out and Taunt with no way to protect against it.
Tracing Intimidate is probably one of the, if not the absolute best uses of Trace you can really get. Weakening Landorus out of the gate like that is pretty helpful for just claiming position and holding ground there early on.
Yeah. Not really a super easy turn for Gardevoir here. I'd love to land a Hyper Voice against this pair of Pokemon. I don't think it's going to get the chance either because it gets faked out or because one or both just leave the field. With Parting Shot, U-turn to just straight switches, and you end up with things that aren't quite as nice to land Hyper Voices onto.
Right.
Aegislash, likewise, doesn't have anything weak to those Shadow Balls or Flash Cannon. Landing one against Landers would be nice, but you risk things like Knockoff and Earthquake.
Aegislash doesn't even want to play the guessing game, going right into the Amoonguss. I feel like we're going to see the Protect, and we do. Creating that situation we just talked about a minute ago where Rage Powder, you get a very safe Trick Room setup. The Fake Out into the Gardevoir slot doesn't want to risk taking any Hyper Voice, while the Earth Power, not an Earthquake, going into the Amoonguss slot, doing a very solid amount of damage.
Yeah, that's a lot of damage, and no recoil coming out, so that's without the Life Orb. Just so much. Maybe Amoonguss not so bulky on the special side here, but doesn't need too much bulk to take Taunt, and that's going to be what it's out here to do. Going to want to Rage Powder that Taunt and set up Trick Room to support the rest of the team, and then it can just switch out, get rid of that Taunt, and get some health back with Regenerator. It's going to have to be the path forward for Hao here.
Oh, absolutely, and it looks like it's going to work to pretty decent success. Even once the Trick Room is successfully set up, as you said before, he doesn't really have a lot of options to play. He has to stall it out. And when you have Hyper Voice or spread moves, being the main form of offense, it becomes especially hard to do that.
Yeah, he's going to have to be looking at some of his bulky Pokemon like Tapu Fini or that Zapdos is in this game, combined with Metagross's resistance to Hyper Voice to try to get through those turns where Hyper Voice is just going to be coming out consistently and constantly.
Jackson opting to go in for the Tapu Fini, setting up that Misty terrain because it seems that he knows that Trick Room might be an inevitability here. by setting up Misty Terrain, you prevent Spore from just being pressed for free, kind of weakening the role of Amoonguss, so to speak. Parting Shot instead of the taunt, realizing that...
But no Rage Powder either.
So you could have seen the prediction there. Also just a very potential Spore, hoping that the Landorus stays in, might be able to catch it. And little doubt in my mind that Metagross doesn't show up here to benefit from the Misty Terrain as well, preventing that sleep and, taking the potential Hyper Voice at the same time. Gardevoir not going for the Trick Room, just going for the Hyper Voice. Solid damage on the Tapu Fini, but not too much on the Metagross. That's the Spore, but yeah, Misty Terrain, stopping that right out of the gate.
Yeah, that Parting Shot landing in a Gardevoir really valuable there. You can see what that half again as much damage both those Pokemon would mean in this game. It's going to start making things look easier, and since Amoonguss didn't actually accomplish anything itself this turn either, because Tapu Fini did come in. Of course, Tapu Fini coming in means you didn't have an extra Earth Power landing. We saw how much damage that was on the previous turn, so maybe just expected another one of those, and so thought it was a good chance to get the Spore off. I wonder if Gardevoir not Trick Rooming there means it's not there. We've talked a lot about it and a lot about supporting it, but if it's not even an option,
that was like a perfect chance to do it as well. Because in exchange you got a weakened Gardevoir and then Amoonguss that didn't do anything, whereas in the alternate situation, Amoonguss would have taken that Parting Shot, no big deal, because it's not your damaging Pokemon anyway, and you would have complete speed control. Tapu Fini getting out of there, going to the Landorus, the Intimidate not mattering too much. You just don't want Tapu Fini to take more damage than it needs. Probably predicting a switch in there, the Amoonguss not doing too much in this circumstance, but staying in. As we know, through Metagross activating its Mega Form, the Tough Claws boost now in effect. Iron Head looking very scary here, but not only that, the potential of Zen Headbutt or Ice Punch onto the Amoonguss slot. Gardevoir protecting, doesn't want to lose that Mega just yet, even though it is weakened through that Parting Shot earlier. The Zen Headbutt revealing itself. Zen Headbutt and Stamping Tantrum don't tend to be on the set together, so I think you were correct in calling Stomping Tantrum not being there, Len, as the critical hit not really mattering too much. Zen Headbutt very powerful, Amoonguss dropping there.
Yeah, really nice turn from Jackson. Eliminates Amoonguss, gets Landorus back in on the field, gets Tapu Fini in the back to deal with this Incineroar later in the game, and then Gardevoir just protects itself from nothing. Iron Head doesn't come out. This Metagross is starting to look very, very threatening, even taking this Intimidate this turn.
Incineroar is nice on paper. You're weakening the physical attackers. You're providing some answer to Metagross, but it might be too little too late here.
Well, especially because Tapu Fini can just switch in, pretty easily here.
Yeah.
Metagross can undo that Intimidate, go into the back for Tapu Fini. You're not worrying about Fake Out that way. You're not worrying about anything Incineroar can do to Tapu Fini. Yeah, you might take another Hyper Voice, but it has been Parting Shotted already.
Right.
We saw that damage really isn't a huge difference maker.
No switches there as the Fake Out just lands on the Metagross. Pretty solid free prevention. Earth Power onto the Gardevoir slot, probably predicting more an Aegis/Switch than anything else. We do see the Trick Room indicating to me that Hao probably just got a little ahead of him. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself as well.
Maybe did expect the taunt, and so rather than Rage Powdering the taunt, wanted to get the Spore off and big damage, and then KO the Persian that way, similar to what happened in Game 1. Instead, it definitely didn't go that way, and now Trick Room comes up much later in the game where it's going to be much less useful because we do already have that Gardevoir weakened. We could easily see Incineroar end up intimidated before this Trick Room expires. It's going to be hard to get the damage he needs.
Especially with Tapu Fini in the back that doesn't really care about Incineroar's attacks, as it is switching in, trying to take the potential Flare Blitz or Knockoff. Either one is just fine. Knocking off Landorus instead, removing the Choice Scarf, but that might even help it in the Trick Room. Hyper Voice hitting both, but again, that Parting Shot makes it so that, the Landorus does go down. I expected it to hang on with just a bit. Pretty nice that you're making the most out of your Trick Room turns. You now have a damaged Tapu Fini and a remove slot, but the Gardevoir is still so weakened that it might not be enough. Persian makes it pretty easy to stall out thanks to the Fake Out. Doesn't really care about anything Incineroar is going to do, and burns that free turn in Trick Room. Gardevoir needs like a Hyper Voice.
Yeah, it's going to definitely have to Fake Out Gardevoir, and then you're looking at what can Incineroar do this turn. With nothing to Tapu Fini. I guess it could knock off and get rid of the Choice Specs, so that Muddy Water, when it does come out this turn, isn't so much damage. Or it could go for a Flare Blitz against Persian, but with that Fur Coat, really isn't that much useful damage, especially if you're just countering on a Hyper Voice when it KO at some point anyway. There's no point in shipping this Persian first. Maybe maybe Incineroar that means goes into the back. We'll have to see.
Persian going for the Fake Out on the Incineroar slot, allowing Gardevoir to Hyper Voice. Maybe not afraid. Scald might be able to pick up the KO here, but he goes for the Incineroar instead, not picking up the KO, even though we don't know, but it's pretty sure that we're the Choice Spec set. Hyper Voice hitting. Even with the super effective damage, that Parting Shot from earlier allowing Persian to survive. No berry on the Persian, though.
Yeah, no berry on either Pokemon. We've already seen what we think is the choice specs in Tapu Fini. I think both of these are in Hyper Voice range, or if not, it's very close, and Incineroar can add the chip it needs to Tapu Fini. That fake out coming in against Incineroar versus Gardevoir really allowed so much extra damage and changed the position of this game really strongly in House favor, I think.
Metagross does have the potential to be hard punished here as the Flare Blitz could hit that. Please hit that slot, not the Tapu Fini. But he predicted the wrong slot. Still enough to take out the Tapu Fini, which is pretty nice, but he's going to be able to get in that fake out for free on the next turn. Metagross got in safely, even though it's not quite what you want. The Hyper Voice not going to do that much damage, even though it is a single target move on this turn. It's getting close, and Aegislash is still in the back. Aegislash is absolutely the necessary win con here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is looking pretty strongly in Howe's favor at this point. You're going to have Fake Out come in here and remove one of these attackers, but the other can KO Persian. And so then you're looking at Metagross versus the other three, and if it doesn't have Stomping Tantrum, then there's just no way it deals with Aegislash. You'd have to be hitting so many Iron Head flinches before that's even a possibility. So this looks pretty comfortably in Howe's favor, I think.
Metagross going for Protect, doesn't want to lose that just yet. Persian is going for the fake out. He's really just trying to build up or remove these Trick Room turns in the safest way possible. But Flare Blitz goes for the Persian, which was absolutely the safest thing you could have done.
Needed to make sure to get a KO there. Persian unlikely to have Protect. And so if you just target it with both, you know you're going to get one down.
And Hao actually manages to clinch that back, really showing the power of his Trick Room mode.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was a big missed opportunity when he didn't get the Trick Room earlier in the game. What I think ended up being the big missed opportunity for Jackson was the fake out into Incineroar, maybe expecting Gardevoir to protect itself or to switch, and instead it just hyper-voiced. That hyper-voiced really changed the face of this game. You started looking at, if Persian is at full health, then it doesn't matter if Flare Blitz lands onto it. You can just fake out Gardevoir. All these things become so much easier before that hyper-voice lands, puts Tapu Fini into Flare Blitz KO range, eliminates Persian's usability, just totally changed everything.
I'm curious to see the rationale behind not going for the Trick Room earlier now, because it looked so strong right out of the gate. Maybe he just wanted to create a better situation for himself where Trick Room is absolutely going to be at the end. I mean, his win con in that game was more Aegislash while we focused kind of on the Gardevoir. But I mean, the Trick Room mode is now tried and true. We know that it's strong against this team.
If I'm Jackson, I'm afraid, because the very first time he clicked Trick Room, that whole match has been looking in my favor. Game 1 was so strong. The whole first half of Game 2 was so strong in my favor. Trick Room gets clicked, and everything goes badly for Jackson. Hao is able to easily turn it around. And now Hao knows that both players are going to be expecting Trick Room from the get-go. It's going to be the focus of this Game 3, absolutely. And we're going to have to see if Jackson can prevent it, if Hao can find the support he needs between Fake Out and Rage Powder to make sure it goes up. Should be a really interesting dynamic here in Game 3.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's certain situations that are almost disappointing for certain players in Game 3 where you absolutely recognize that this is the strategy they're going to go for, but sometimes you just can't stop that anyway. It looks to me that Jackson's best bet might be a Persian Metagross lead, just trying to prevent Aegislash and Amoonguss Gardevoir out of the gate. But if any lead change-up can really spell bad news for that. Incineroar and Aegislash as alternatives are both pretty hard for that strategy. Hao has a lot of lead options and pretty easy ways to set up Trick Room that make it hard for Jackson to kind of adapt. And I expect Trick Room to show, again, its real strength against this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to find a way to punish it as it goes up, try to get as much damage out, then outlast it using things like the Fake Out, the Parting Shot to weaken damage output, having bulky things like the Tapu Fini, maybe Zapdos or Tyranitar, something that can not necessarily be slow enough to play in Trick Room, but deal with taking the attacks in Trick Room enough to stay on the field, and then reach the end of those 5 turns, and then start trying to get those KOs. It's early damage, surviving the 5 turns, and then really trying to take control of the game once it goes away.
Right. I mean, it's possible that he just felt it was, or how that is, just felt it was too early to set up the Trick Room in the last game. Having Amoonguss there, only being able to press Rage Powder, kind of makes it a bit easier for him to burn those Trick Room turns, even though we know that the only thing that's really taking Hyper Voice here is the Metagross. From the lead slot, we see Hao opt to go with Incineroar in the Gardevoir, while from Jackson, we see Persian and Tapu Fini. Yeah,
this would be a really strong position for Hao if the Incineroar Fake Out was faster than Persian.
Yeah.
But instead, that Persian Fake Out is going to be able to comfortably land onto Gardevoir first. I'd expect then the Incineroar Fake Out to land onto the Tapu Fini to make sure Big Choice Specs Muddy Water doesn't come out against these two, probably meaning turn 1's a wash, unless a player can find a switch here that they think on this turn that would otherwise be a wash, gives them that leg up to start playing from turn 2 onwards. maybe getting Incineroar out and Mungus in, doesn't mind taking the Muddy Water at all, and then provides you that support to get Fake Out on, or rather to get Trick Room on turn 2, since of course Incineroar won't be able to Fake Out, doesn't really provide any support for Trick Room going up on turn 2.
Gardevoir going Mega, indicating no switches were actually made. We might just see this wash turn unless one of the players got a bit ahead of themselves or successfully make a hard read with their Fake Outs. The Fake Out selection, really important here. The Fake Out hitting the Gardevoir from on Hao side, but the Tapu Fini on Jackson's side. So both fairies flinching. The wash turn, just as you said.
Yep. And I think that wash turn, even though nothing actively happened, it moves this back into Jackson's favor because now Trick Room isn't safe in any way. It can just get taunted. This taunt comes out.
I mean, he could have went for a Protect, switch into a Mungus. Maybe he doesn't have it. The Hyper Voice coming out for free here, acknowledging that taunt very possible. No parting shot to prevent that Hyper Voice from KOing this time, so Persian falls pretty early, doing solid damage to Tapu Fini at the same time while he retaliates with a Muddy Water, hoping to do... we saw that Scald did not KO the Incineroar last time, so I don't expect that here, but doing solid damage to Gardevoir at the same time, and getting that accuracy drop, pretty huge considering that Hyper Voice usually a very safe 100% option.
Yeah, I mean, we see the big risk of that taunt. It denied the Trick Room this turn, denies the Trick Room going forward, but because he didn't actually click Trick Room and the Hyper Voice comes out instead, you lose Persian. You lose so much damage on a Tapu Fini. Combined with that Flare Blitz, Tapu Fini is only about a quarter health here, really not as valuable as it otherwise would be. But now you don't have to worry about Trick Room. You can threaten big damage onto both of these. You have the Iron Head and the Muddy Water is an easy KO. It's really hard to switch into that combination, too. Even a Mungus won't appreciate taking Choice Specs Muddy Water plus an Iron Head. Incineroar, if it has Protect, can stay on the field, but if it doesn't, it's going to be needing a switch too. So even giving up Persian and all that damage to stop the Trick Room may have just been worth it for Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw what happened when Trick Room went up in Game 2.
No, yeah, it's absolutely worth making that sacrificial play if you can prevent Trick Room from getting up, because we know that even from a bad position, Trick Room good enough against Jackson's team to really create a situation for a comeback. Tapu Fini replacing Gardevoir. This is the first time we've seen it from Hao, but not something that really enjoys taking an Iron Head too much. Lander is going in, intimidating the Incineroar, creating a safer situation for the Metagross to do whatever it wants.
Yeah, but Muddy Water would have just prevented Incineroar from attacking.
Yeah.
Incineroar now actually being able to get this Flare Blitz off depending on what this Metagross is doing.
You know, Metagross just powering up, no longer immune to the Intimidates. The free Zen Headbutt coming out. Oh, an over prediction! It must have been the Amoongus because Aegislash very possible in the back. Free Flare Blitz, but not enough to KO. The Intimidate making that a bit safe. The Berry Berry activation, maybe Assault Vest because of the Scald Muddy Water just did no damage. But that was a hard turn for Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, trying to make the big prediction that Amoongus comes into that slot to take the water attack, misses it, but does kind of cover his risks there, brings the Intimidate in so that if he's completely off the mark, that Flare Blitz doesn't just come out and KO or very nearly KO Metagross. Instead, Metagross still, around. Probably not going to be able to take a Muddy Water from Tapu Fini. It would be close, but Metagross, not from a Pokemon that relies on its bulk consistently, mainly just wants to be able to take one good attack now and then.
Metagross getting out of there, going for the Tapu Fini itself. Very safe switch in here. It resists both water and fire and dark, but also not in the greatest health condition, and we know that it does not have a berry. Aegislash replacing the Tapu Fini, revealing House 4. No Amoongus to have predicted that Zen Headbutt for. Sludge Bomb, but oh my! Excellent switch once again, reading that prediction as the Flare Blitz comes out for free a second time. Not enough to take out the Tapu Fini even at that low health.
Yeah, that Intimidate again, coming in clutch, keeping that Tapu Fini around. Should be faster than both of these, so that means that Choice Specs Muddy Water can come out this turn with an 11 HP Tapu Fini and threaten so much damage. But I just said Choice Specs Muddy Water, and there's Wide Guard on the other side.
Yeah.
So you may need to just, go a little simpler, try to target something single, targeting onto Incineroar, try to eliminate it without risking that Wide Guard coming out and ruining your turn. But you'd love for Landorus to land an Earth Power onto Aegislash if it isn't holding its own choice item. We don't know what that Landorus has yet, but if it could do that, it would be really valuable.
Jackson going to want another Intimidate in the future, but Metagross just getting in there with low health, kind of a risky situation to switch. Aegislash is going to be getting a free move here unless Tapu Fini has some method of preventing it from attacking a Muddy Water miss. Very possibly one of those situations. Muddy Water successfully hitting both targets, including the Aegislash and accuracy drop here can be huge. And we do see it. Hopefully no miss following that up. Oh, but you see the Z move. Those can't miss, so very safe in that situation. You might normally think that using a Z move on a Pokemon with such low health is a risky wasted opportunity for such huge damage.
It was aimed towards that Landorus.
Exactly.
I think it's about to KO this Metagross.
Oh, you think it was at the full health one?
I think it was at the
Oh,
Landorus.
no, well, yeah. The thing is, with the Z move, in that situation, it didn't matter because you're more than fine taking even the lower health Pokemon if it means you're not going to miss.
But this is such a valuable KO here.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
getting Metagross knocked out, even though it was low health, you're happy to see that Metagross leave the field. Yeah, that means that Gardevoir that's in the back is feeling a lot more comfortable when it comes back.
Not even just that, but we know that, or I don't know if it's actually been shown since the moveset is mixed. We've seen U-turn, Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, but I believe the speed has shown us before that Landorus on Jackson's side is Choice Scarf, and he was Choice Scarf in Costa Mesa, I believe. So now he has to lock into a move. And this is problematic because to do any sort of damage to that Tapu Fini, like realistically, you're going to need the Sludge Bomb.
The same thing for damage against Gardevoir.
Exactly.
So you're going to then be relying on Tapu Fini to deal with Aegis Slash, but it has Wide Guard, and you're locked into Muddy Water.
No, I mean, that's probably a very safe double protect from Hao. There's no reason to overexert. You can create a safe position just by pressing Protect and King Shield very safely. There's no punishment.
Especially if Hao knows that it is that Choice Scarf Landorus and knows that once he's seen what this locks into, now knows about that Earth Power, knows that Tapu Fini is totally safe out here.
Yeah, I mean, Earth Power makes more sense to go for because it's probably going to do... I mean, it's the only thing that can hit Aegis Slash, and it still hits Incineroar for big damage, even though it's so weak at this point. But it's not enough to going to be able to remove that Tapu Fini and Gardevoir. We've created a situation where you can press Muddy Water and Wide Guard and have basically no punishment.
Yeah, I mean, that Earth Power will just come out and eventually KO Aegis Slash, probably 2 hits, maybe just in 1. But in the meantime, Muddy Water is going to be coming out from the other Tapu Fini doing a lot of damage.
Earth Power is enough to remove that Aegis Slash, but just KOing that Aegis Slash doesn't remove the Wide Guard effects. It's still going to be here on this turn, as we see with the Moon... Oh, no, I'm sorry, wrong Tapu Fini. Moonblast going very safely into the other Tapu Fini, creating Landorus versus 3 in a situation where Fake Out is still there. You're locked to the Earth Power, which doesn't KO Tapu Fini and Gardevoir. So I feel very safe in saying congratulations to Hao.
I'd say where there's a Rock Slide, there's a way, but this Landorus is
locked
into Earth Power.
Yeah.
Earth Power has no flinch chance. Should just be comfortably, even if you just stick with Moonblast to make sure that you aren't missing any Muddy Waters. Just Fake Out, Moonblast, take an Earth Power, another Moonblast, and eventually this game ends.
Hao maybe... Or no, I'm sorry, not Hao. Jackson maybe overexerting a little bit early on. We saw that he prevented Trick Room, which showed to be, pretty helpful considering how it went in the second game. But then Hao turns around and doesn't even need it. And I think a large part of that is because he went for these predictions that ended up not paying off and basically gave Hao, I believe, 2 free turns.
Yeah, there was a couple big missed opportunities there with that Zen Headbutt landing into Incineroar and then allowing all that Flare Blitz damage out.
And then the Sludge Bomb on the Aegis Slash.
And then, that Sludge Bomb onto Aegis Slash right as it never-ending nightmared and KO'd that Metagross that was really so valuable for Jackson. This game, I think, pretty much was out of hand once Persian and Metagross were gone. That's the core of the team. The other 2 are there just kind of as accessories.
How safely picking up the KO on that Landorus with a combination of Fake Out and Moonblast. Congratulations, a 2-1 victory. Hard fought because Game 1 looked a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, Game 1 definitely seemed rough. The whole beginning of Game 2 seemed rough. I mean, it seemed like we were about to have a pretty clean 2-0 in Jackson's favor, and then things just totally turned around. That Trick Room turned around Game 2, and then the threat of that Trick Room turned around Game 3, forced that taunt out, and then allowed so much damage from that full strength Hyper Voice landing onto both Persian and Tapu Fini. I
mean, there were a couple maybe pitfalls that you see among a lot of players in that situation. You saw the almost complete ignoring of Gardevoir because it was a -1 special attack, but there are a lot of times where if you ignore these things, after enough time, they become a threat once again, and you saw that in Game 2. He let Gardevoir sit there long enough where the repeated chip damage created a situation where I can now win with Gardevoir, whereas it looked almost helpless early on in that game.
Yeah, especially this Pokemon that are putting out high base power spread attacks.
Yeah.
They just keep racking up that damage slowly. They're bulky enough that you can't just remove them from the field in a snap if you really decide you want to, and so that damage just adds up into the point where it gets out of control.
For me, the second big pitfall that I see for a lot of players was in Game 3, pretty much right after Persian was KO'd. You do see that a lot of players kind of freak out in Game 3 situations in which they lost a Pokemon, even if they are in a positional advantage. I think that a lot of the reasons he went for these big predictions was because he felt pressured because he was down in a 3-mon situation because of the loss of the Persian.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely that turn where Zen Headbutt ended up landing onto Incineroar was vision where you just look at the board,
Yeah.
you see, well, that's Ironhead versus Gardevoir. That can't attack. And that's Muddy Water versus this weekend Incineroar. That can't attack.
Yeah.
So this is totally safe. And instead, you didn't get any damage at all out of Jackson's side, and you had that Flare Blitz land on a Metagross
Right.
because just a little bit overthought with Tapu Fini leaving the field, bringing in that Landorus, and then having, of course, that Zen Headbutt, just a misprediction there.
Yeah.
But not covering what was on the field before worrying about what the next couple Pokemon were.
I mean, he went for ambitious plays, and sometimes that is what wins games. I mean, if let's say Amoonguss had switched in on that headbutt,
Would've been awesome.
we would have been we would have went crazy, and then like the game probably would have been over at that point. It takes a lot of guts to be able to go for such a risky play, and they don't always work out, and you sell the result here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is it for round 3 here in Portland. We will be back with round 4 shortly.